Yeah, so this is like the first of three statements Peter makes about sobriety. We're going to read all three of them. But in this case, he's saying, well, you need to stay sober because that way you'll be focused on the hope that you have in Jesus Christ, right? And remain watchful for his return, right? Yeah, so the end of all things is near. Same thing, Christ is going to return.
When he's revealed that is coming, yeah.
So be alert and be sober, right? That you can pray and be ready. That sounds like a good reason to stay sober.
So you don't get eaten by a lion.
Yeah. Welcome to Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. I'm Timothy.
And I'm Caleb.
And you're listening to Bible Discussions, the forum where we explore biblical topics that are relevant to your life. Today we're continuing our series on the 30 sayings of the wise from the book of Proverbs. And today we're going to be looking at saying number 18 about avoiding drunkenness. So this is something we just talked about a few weeks ago in episode 15. And there it was more concerned about the right path. And we cautioned people that it wasn't a prohibition against drinking or drunkenness. But this one's definitely a prohibition against drunkenness.
Yeah.
But this saying, it talks about the pitfalls, the outcomes of a life of drunkenness, and it's also a little longer than most of the sayings we've been studying recently. So let's go ahead and read that in Proverbs 23, verses 29 through 35.
Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaints? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights, and your mind will imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping on the high seas, lying on top of the rigging. They hit me, you will say, but I'm not hurt. They beat me, but I don't feel it. When will I wake up so I can find another drink?
So in the very beginning, in verse 29, it says, who has woe, who has sorrow, strife, complaints, needless bruises, and bloodshot eyes. It's like a riddle, right?
Yeah.
And by the time you get to the bloodshot eyes, right, like everybody's guessed it. It's like one of those.
Yeah.
I'll start off kind of general. Who has woe? Everybody.
Yeah.
Who has sorrow? Everybody. Who has strife? But when you add them all together, it's kind of like, well, okay, bloodshot eyes. He's probably talking about somebody who's been drinking too much, right?
Yeah.
So,
or needless bruises, like today, I think of like opioids and stuff. People have like their arms all marked up. Sometimes you can, you think you can probably tell just by seeing somebody.
Mm-hmm. Or when you become elderly and you're taking aspirin every day to because of heart and stroke, concerns, you get a lot of bruises and stuff. But by the time you add everything together, this entire list, it's like a riddle, and the answer is a drunken person, somebody who drinks too much. And I think that's kind of like the intention, right, of this little opening riddle. It's like what's obvious what the answer is, and so that's the same in real life. It's obvious to us when we have a friend who drinks too much, right?
Yeah.
We all have had friends, I'm sure, or family members who fell into that, alcoholism trap. And
it his warning there is interesting because he doesn't just say avoid it entirely, but he says he's talking about those who linger over wine. And then he says do not gaze at the cup and go into sample bowls of mixed wine. When you kind of start to obsess over it, I guess if you're a wine connoisseur, that's his warning there is falling in love with it and becoming obsessed with it.
Yeah. No, it's funny you say that. I went to a conference. It was a training really for my company all week long, and every night we had different kind of entertainment and thing that we went to. And one night they brought in like an oinophile guy, and he brought in all these different glasses of wine, and he was telling us this one's for after this, and this one has this, and this one has these fruit flavors and odors and things. And then and then there was a bowl that they gave you, so you were supposed to
sip it,
taste them and then spit it back in the bowl so you didn't get drunk.
Yeah.
I didn't even participate at the time because I was on the road, I was traveling, and I had sort of made a rule for myself that, if I'm not with my wife and stuff, I won't have any alcohol.
Yeah.
And so I didn't think it made sense to drink anything, while traveling on the road like that in a group of people. So, but at any
Then
rate,
you get to the end of that and one guy's bowl is empty. You're like hey, wait a minute.
yeah. But, later I thought, that was kind of a cool exercise. I probably should have done all that stuff, taste and see. That would have been kind of cool to experience. But anyways, the point being that, and like Caleb said, it looks great in a cup, especially now with glass cups. Like,
Yeah.
they probably had opaque.
You got some nerd in a
drinking.
bow tie telling you all the fancy stuff about it.
Yeah. But like it says, after the initial riddle and after it talks about how beautiful it looks and everything, it says in the end, it's like a poison, like a snake viper.
Yeah.
A poison.
I think one thing that comes to mind, like especially when he says, "Don't gaze at the cup." It's been a little bit, but I haven't quoted Chesterton that recently, maybe 3 or 4 episodes. But in his poem, the Ballad of the White Horse, he's pitting pagan culture, northern Germanic culture against Christian culture when the Vikings are like invading England, and he has this line on there that says, if it be not better to fast for joy than to feast for misery. And he talks about death blazing clear above the cup and clear above the crown. That like this conquering Danish, king, whenever the fighting's done and he's sitting there at his feast, he's got his crown and his cup, he's miserable. And so they just feast out of misery and there's no happiness in it. And then the Christians are fasting out of joy. Like that juxtaposition of why do you go to those things? Why are you going to the food and drink?
Yeah, if that's where you try to find your happiness, you're not going to, right?
Yeah, and then Chesterton in Elsewhere, when he's just writing plainly, his advice on drinking is that you should never drink when you're sad, but only when you're happy. It should be from like an overabundance of happiness. Because if you drink when you're sad, you're going to start relying on it.
We actually had that in one of the recent episodes.
Did I quote that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's interesting, though, when you can compare it to fasting, because if you are fasting, you have a heightened awareness of anything that would be, nice.
Yeah.
You'd be like,
anything that tastes good.
Hey, look, that's something that gives me joy because right now I'm fasting.
In college one time, I had decided to fast a certain day, and this girl brought in like homemade brownies to the class, and I was just like, I don't want any of your.
No. So now you brought up another thing that reminds me of a class I went. When I went to graduate school, I took short-term intensive courses, and you had to go there on site. It was like before the internet. You had to go on site at the college, and you had to stay in the dorm with somebody else who was taking the class, and so I always took a ton of food with me in a big cooler. I had all kinds of like homemade cookies for my wife and brownies and, all kinds of stuff that I took. And so then I get put in the room with this guy and I said, hey man, I got all this stuff if you want any of it. There's cookies, my wife made brownies. And he's like, oh, I'm doing a 7-day fast. I was like, during a 1-week intensive course? And he was like, yeah, it's like my whole church is doing it, and so like I have to do it too, or not in solidarity with them, and I'm their pastor and everything. I was just like, okay. So I sat there eating like a king in front of this guy all week. But anyway.
Yeah, well, that's encouraging. Yeah.
Well, that's his decision, not mine. But
right. Yeah, he shouldn't have told you. What a Pharisee bragging about his fast.
Yeah. Well, I was offering him cookies every 5 minutes. So, but actually, in verse 32, when it talks about it, looking good, but actually being a poison or a venom, it made me think of coffee because I don't like coffee. I like a baby mouth. Like anything hot burns my mouth, and so whenever I drink coffee, it smells great, but it doesn't taste as good. I
don't like. I've never been able to like
and then
coffee.
It makes my tongue feel like it's been burned, and coarse. It's
Yeah.
like I just had it's this weird aftertaste, this feeling in my mouth. So I've never liked coffee, but I think it smells fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's,
Well, I also suspect that even coffee, like anything with large amounts of caffeine, which I still get caffeinated beverages sometimes, but I suspect that the way that works is it just steals time off the end of your life. It makes you feel more energetic, and it destroys your heart. You're just like, oh, I'm tired right now. Let me just, another drink of this. That's another day my heart won't survive in the long run.
yeah. Well, I mean, again, this is coffee and not alcohol. But when when I was a kid, I guess in high school, my dad got really sick one day, and he never. I mean, he always went to work. Like he was a workaholic, and he never skipped. And he was like, I can't go in today. He had fevers, he's sweating, he had all kinds of problems. And so I was like, man, Dad's really sick. So then the next day, he's like, I can't. I'm so sick. I'm not going in. And I was like, man, he's sick. And then like at 9 a.m, he pops up in bed and yells to my mom, did you change brands of coffee? She's like, well, yeah, I got some different coffee. He said, let me see it. He's like, this is decaffeinated. Oh. And so he drank some caffeinated coffee and shot out the door. And I was like, man, I'm never starting to drink coffee.
Yeah.
So I just never did it because I could see what it was doing to him. And I mean, I guess it's either don't ever drink it or drink it every day.
And isn't there a story about granddad, mom's dad too, where he was like going to the doctor with like heart palpitations or something, and the doctor couldn't figure it out. He's like, well, are you drinking coffee? He's like, yeah, how much? Oh, yeah, like 3 or 4 pots a day. And like, well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that story.
Something similar to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my dad drank like every morning my mom would make 2 pots of coffee. They would split one for breakfast and then he would take the other one in a thermos to work. So he was drinking like a pot and a half. So
yeah,
he was minor leagues compared to that story. But
yeah, all kinds of stuff, we just don't think about what's in the things we're pouring in our bodies these days.
yeah. Yeah.
So back to, alcohol.
Yeah.
In particular, the effect it has on you is it alters your perception of things. It affects your mind directly.
Yeah, we saw that in this poem, I guess.
Yeah, verse 33. You'll see strange sights, and your mind will imagine confusing things. That made me think of Matthew 6, 22 and 23. I know you like to teach on that a lot, where Jesus says that the eyes are the light of the body, and if the light inside of you is darkness, how great is that darkness? And it's like, what are you looking at? What are you seeing? What are you focusing on? And going back to what Solomon's advice in verse 31, don't gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, like admiring it.
Yeah.
What's going into your mind, into your heart, and then what are you going to, you're just going to drink more of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it also talks about, your coordination. It talks about you'll be like somebody who's sleeping on the high seas, lying on the rigging. You're swaying with the ship, and it's like, I feel like the whole room's moving. You hear people say stuff like that when they're drunk.
And then it affects, like they hit me, but I'm not hurt. They beat me, but I don't feel it.
Yeah.
Like, you get this false confidence, right?
Yeah,
when
or
you're drunk.
your senses are numbed.
Yeah, and your senses are numbed. That makes me think of Andrew Clavin, the podcaster. I mean, he's an author, but he's got a podcast that we both listen to. And he's talked about this multiple times. I think he had like a cousin or something back when they sort of first invented antidepressants. And he had a cousin who was taking them. And the way that they explained it to him was, you're still depressed. You just can't feel it. It's like, it hit me, but I don't feel it. Like, I must be invincible. Like,
Yeah.
No, you just have cut up. You've ruined your brain, so you don't even feel what's happening to you.
Well, the thing about it is that pain is very important.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, I want to know if I put my hand on a hot stove,
Yeah.
so I can get it off of there fast before it gets destroyed. And so, yeah, if you dull your senses to because we've all seen like Western movies where a guy gets shot and his buddy's like, here, drink this and I'll rip the bullet out of your leg. It's like, is that really going to work?
It might.
But yeah, I mean, but it can. I mean, if you're
At least
passed out drunk, right?
Yeah. At least you'll look manly in a Western movie, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the whole reason we drink, right? So we look cool.
Pretty much.
Until we look like an idiot for drinking too much, and all our friends notice, like this proverb tells us. So yeah,
So the root of the problem is that all of this destroys sober thinking and being sober minded.
That's true. I mean, because one thing we didn't mention was it's also addictive, right? It's like an escape, and it's addictive, right? That way that it ends. Like, when can I wake up so I can get another drink?
Yeah.
Like, when can I wake up to reality so that I can deaden myself to reality again?
Yeah. It's a refusal to live in reality.
Yeah, and so all the deleterious effects that we talked about above, right? It's this terrible cycle too.
Like you start getting sober, and then you start feeling all those blows that you took in the bar fight. You're like, oh man, this stinks. I got to get drunk again.
Yeah. So it is a juxtaposition, like you mentioned earlier, of extremes. You know, you got sober thinking, clear-mindedness, and then you have drunkenness. You know, where you're actually living an altered reality. Of all your senses. And so, Caleb, as the Biblocus historian, you have done some research and found some statements of some of the church fathers that we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, so this first one's from Gregory the Great, or Pope Gregory the First. He would have lived through the 6th century, pretty much. He died in 604. I don't know exactly when this was written, but probably the late 500s, most likely.
While he was Pope, I would think.
Yeah, so he takes, Solomon's kind of imagery there about, not feeling the blows and all of that, and he applies it spiritually, right? And shows how this happens in somebody's life spiritually. So he says, "For the soul that sleeps from the care of its solicitude is beaten and feels not pain, because as it foresees not impending evils, so neither is it aware of those which it has perpetrated. It is dragged and in no wise feels it, because it is led by the allurements of vices, and yet is not aroused to keep guard over itself. But again it wishes to awake, that it may again find wine, because although weighed down by the sleep of its torpor from keeping guard over itself, it still strives to be awake to the cares of the world, that it may be ever drunk with pleasures. And while sleeping to that wherein it ought to have been wisely awake, it desires to be awake to something else, to which it might have laudably slept. Hence it is written previously, and thou shalt be as one that sleepeth in the midst of the sea, and as a steersman that is lulled to rest, having let go the rudder." That's going back to Solomon there, and I'm guessing there might be difficulty in translating that because it's different. That the NIV talked about sleeping in the rigging, and here he's talking about a steersman and a rudder. The Jews were not known for their seafaring abilities. The only one we really know that went to sea was eaten by a giant fish. So. Maybe the language is not 100% clear.
Solomon actually did have fleets of ships that went out and got stuff and brought back. So yeah, he may have had a bunch of guys that knew. Yeah,
but they're still not thought of as and I don't know anything about the language, so I'm wondering if the difference in imagery here is due to not being sure how to translate.
There's no verse where it says we won a mighty sea battle today.
Yeah,
it was just like the sea peoples came in and destroyed us. Is usually what it says.
Yeah, so I'm just speculating on why it's a different. Slightly different imagery there, but letting go of the rudder is kind of sums up what Gregory's talking about there, saying you're on watch, like you're the guy steering the ship through the night while most of everyone else is sleeping, and you let go of the rudder because you fell asleep. Going back to the spiritual, how this happens in your heart. He's talking about where he says, you're sleeping to that where you should have been wisely awake. So you're supposed to be on guard over your heart. Like God tells Cain, sin crouches at your door and it desires to have you. You should be on guard against that. But you're sleeping there, and you desire to be awake to something else, to which you should have been asleep, as Gregory puts it, which is all of your sins and lusts and vices. And that's why he says, it's been weighed down by sleep from guarding over itself. It still strives to be awake to the cares of the world, that it may be ever drunk with pleasures. And so basically, you're going to be awake to something. You're going to be focused on something. And kind of going back to what we were talking about there, are you waking up to reality?
Yeah.
Are you going to be sober-minded and alert to what's actually going on? Or, when you feel, when you start to wake up and feel, like you were saying, who has woes, who has complaints? Well, everybody, right? But basically, who's blind to it, willfully blind to it, like an idiot, that's the drunkard.
Yeah.
You know, so and as Gregory's pointing out, there's more pleasures than just drink here, right? He hints at that. So when you start feeling the, difficulty, the pain of being alive, of struggling and trying to especially trying to live a godly life, it's hard. Do you just start numbing yourself with something, with some kind of vices or something easy?
I take the fifth.
Oh,
you weren't asking me. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Or do you stay alert
that's
to
a
that?
pun and a half right there. I take the fifth. Like the Fifth
Fifth
Amendment. And then the fifth. When I said I take the fifth, I meant the amendment to the Constitution, not a bottle.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Yeah.
That was funny. But anyway, I think we get the point, right? It's it blends in perfectly with what Solomon's saying there. I mean, he's using probably because he's obviously quoting it directly.
Okay, well, so then that wasn't the only church father you found.
I also found Clement of Alexandria, who's writing all the way back in the 2nd century, probably, maybe the early 3rd. So he says, I therefore admire those who have adopted an austere life and who are fond of water, the medicine of temperance, and flee as far as possible from wine, shunning it as they would the danger of fire. It is proper, therefore, that boys and girls should keep as much as possible away from this medicine. He means, young people, youth. For it is not right to pour into the burning season of life the hottest of all liquids, wine, adding, as it were, fire to fire. For hence wild impulses and burning lusts and fiery habits are kindled. Somebody should have thought about that when they were establishing universities. They should have had like a dry policy where there's no alcohol allowed on campus, like every single university used to. And they just, a lot of them still technically have it. They just are giving up on enforcing it.
Yeah. And I think every beer commercial ever made, they've never read this passage right here. It's always a bunch of young people playing sand volleyball together, drinking beer. So I don't know.
This is bad publicity for them. It'd be funny if somebody had one of these verses like on their, or one of these letters of the church fathers like on their behind their bar.
We're not sponsored by any beer companies, and nor are we likely to be now.
Yeah, but that is a really good advice, I think. Like in the hottest season of life, right, when you're like going through puberty and everything, you've got both emotions and physical passions that are kind of like hitting their peak. It's like, let's add alcohol to the mix.
I guess I didn't read it that way. I was thinking of, so like you're already stupid. Don't make yourself stupider.
Well, I think there's that too. But he's talking about burning and fire, and impulses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't have the judgment yet. We tend to think of it that way. I was talking with a friend about like foul language. It's weird the way we treat foul language. It's like you're not allowed to say it as a kid, and then when you get to be an adult, it's kind of like, oh, that's when he, that guy's foul mouthed, but not a kid. We don't want a kid to do that. You get smacked on the wrist, but you're old enough now, so you can do it. And it's like it should be the opposite. Like it's not adult language; it's immature language, and the adults should be the ones that have the self-control, either not to use it or to use it in its appropriate context, and it should be like obviously not like 2-year-olds, but like teenagers that are running around foul-mouthed. But we don't ever grow out of it. We're all just eternal teenagers.
Well, it's just like we talked about in episode 15, the last time we talked about drunkenness, and drinking, and the right path in life. If you're celebrating 50 years of marriage and you have a glass of champagne, you're not sinning because you're celebrating the right path.
Right.
And there's a use for alcohol there where it's a celebration, the joy of the moment.
But if you're celebrating turning 21, being legally allowed to drink, so you're drinking because you can drink.
And
what's the point of that?
And you wake up the next morning and from a blackout going, what happened? Yeah,
maybe a morning after the morning after. Don't even.
Yeah.
So Clement goes on, and I wanted to include this because he does. Like that first part sounds really strong. Like he must be a teetotaler, But then later, it's interesting. He moderates it. He says, "It has therefore been well said, a joy of the soul and heart was wine, created from the beginning when drunk in moderate sufficiency." And he's quoting probably some kind of like Greek or Roman writer there, I assume. Because unless it's translated very differently, that doesn't seem to be a Bible verse. And it is best to mix the wine with as much water as possible and not to have recourse to it as water, and so get enervated to drunkenness, and not pour it in as water from love of wine. For both are works of God, and so the mixture of both, of water and of wine, conduces together to health, because life consists of what is necessary and of what is useful. And that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like wine in moderation is medicine. We see this. There's a passage that talks about giving wine to the sick, or to like somebody on their deathbed. There's Paul advises Timothy in 1 Timothy 5:23. It's interesting. You have to read between the lines, but he tells Timothy, stop drinking only water. Mix in a little wine for your stomach and for your constant sickness. And so you kind of wonder, like, is Timothy drinking bad water and he was like just got constant diarrhea or something?
Sounds like it.
And yeah, that might be what's going on. So if you think about it, if you mix some alcohol in, it would sterilize the water, Mm-hmm. So Paul's not wrong there. And even today, they think there's probably some benefits to moderate amounts of like wine or beer, something with low alcohol content. And but in large amounts, it becomes poisonous. Yeah. Which is why it works as a sterilizing agent.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like the guy who gets a wound, and he's got his alcohol that he's wanting to drink, and he's got the wound that's going to get infected, and he's like,
don't waste it
on
that.
I don't want to waste it on this. It's like, what? It's important to use it as medicine. Yeah. It's not important to use it as...
Just burn the wound. That'll work.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it's very interesting there. I mean, he's kind of hearkening back to that. Paul uses that as a defense as well for Christian freedom at one point. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, right? He's saying both water and wine they're part of God's creation. So he does kind of give permission there, but not to give it to drunkenness. He's like, don't start confusing the two. You don't drink wine like it's water, and get drunk.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So that's a couple of the church fathers. But now we want to look at it. Caleb, the historian, me, the Bible, student. We want to kind of do a survey of the Bible and look at some instances where it talks about drunkenness and some examples of drunkenness. We'll start with, and that story in the Bible begins with Noah, right?
Yeah.
And this is a tale, a terrible tale in Genesis 9.
The last we hear of Noah, sadly.
Yeah. In Genesis 9:18 through 29, it says, the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. So that's a good story of redemption, that the flood came, but these people were saved and repopulate the earth. In verse 20, he says, Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backward and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father naked. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, cursed be Canaan. The lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers. He also said, praise be to the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be a slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be the slave of Japheth. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Noah lived a total of 950 years, and then he died. So,
yeah, it's a sad story, and we have talked about it before. At least when we did honoring your father and your mother in the commandments.
Yeah,
and so we don't need to dwell on it too much. It probably is worth reminding people that very likely there's a euphemism here. Seeing your father's nakedness is implying having slept with his wife, which is even worse in this case since it's his mom, presumably.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, that's what we presented in the honoring your parents episode. If you want to go back and look at our 10 Commandments series and look at the honor your parents and listen to that. Now, but notice how, and the main reason I wanted to present this story is it presents kind of a theme that you'll see throughout the Bible. Is it's presented as an intergenerational story, intergenerational loss, you know?
Yeah, if you find yourself cursing your son at the end of your life, like something's gone wrong, and maybe he deserves it. Like especially if what we're reading between the lines there is accurate, I guess Ham deserves it. But again, Noah should probably be wondering, who raised him to be the kind of guy that deserves to be cursed?
Yeah,
and who allowed this to happen? Whose job was to keep watch over the family and not get drunk in a tent?
Yeah, because his drunkenness, right, is representative of his inattention to important things.
Yeah.
Like we just have been talking about the whole episode. And it affects his family's future. And, with like Abraham, the promises to Abraham were that, your future generations are going to be immense. They're going to be vast. They're going to change the world for the better. And then like with Noah's promises here, it's like, well, there's going to be enmity between your kids. One's going to be the slave to the other. It's going to be problems. And it's, tied together to this story of his inattentiveness.
Yeah.
So, and we'll see more passages about attentiveness.
Yeah.
Later.
You can imagine there were probably other problems too. If this was possible, there was more neglect happening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
on to one where we don't have to guess
yeah.
about the incest.
Yeah, next story is the story of Lot and his daughters. And, after Sodom and Gomorrah have been destroyed and they have escaped, but his wife did not escape. Yeah. And so picking it up in Genesis 19:30 through 38.
Lot and his 2 daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. He and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man around here to give us children, as is the custom all over the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine and then sleep with him and preserve our family line through our father." That night they got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and slept with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day the older daughter said to the younger, "Last night I slept with my father. Let's get him to drink wine again tonight, and you go in and sleep with him so we can preserve our family line through our father." So they got their father to drink wine that night also, and the younger daughter went in and slept with him. Again, he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son, and she named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites today. So note at the very beginning there why they were dwelling in the mountains away from people. As the daughters point out, there's no man around here to give us children, because Lot was afraid. Mm-hmm. So kind of like we were talking about earlier, when, like life is hard, especially to lead a godly life. I think we can probably say he shouldn't have been afraid, right? Like God just brought him out of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, saved him from that. So what's he afraid of?
Yeah. Well, and interesting, in the aftermath of this and with what his daughters do, they name their kids like Moab, which sounds like Hebrew for from father, which is kind of like a terrible name, to have, like, as if you know what the backstory is. And then Ben-Ami means son of my father's people. So in both cases, like, what kind of a heritage, like how do you have a proud heritage as a people if you know the backstory and you know the name of your nation? Is it, I'm the product of my mom slept with her dad,
Yeah.
It's a strange story. It's, kind of icky. And all because dad got drunk.
Right.
Well, the daughters got him drunk. And I don't know. I mean,
well, he already seems to be kind of hiding from the reality of the situation.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking, like, if that was your national heritage, like, what? I don't want to hear your national anthem, right?
Yeah.
It's not a good one. So those are two really bad stories about drunkenness, right? So how about some stories about people who remain sober? And so here's a couple stories that, they're not necessarily about drunkenness per se, but it's involved in the story and people who don't want to get drunk for good reasons. So first one, Uriah the Hittite. After, everybody's familiar with the story probably that David got Bathsheba pregnant in an adulterous relationship while her husband Uriah was out fighting a war for David. And so David, when he realizes that Bathsheba is pregnant, he calls Uriah back from the fighting, and he's hoping that he'll go in and sleep with his wife while he's back in town so that he can blame the baby on him. Yeah. And so beginning in 2 Samuel 11, verses 6 through 15, it says, "So David sent this word to Joab, 'Send me Uriah the Hittite.' And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, 'Go down to your house and wash your feet.' So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. David was told Uriah did not go home. So he asked Uriah, 'Haven't you just come from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home?' Uriah said to David, 'The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing.' Then David said to him, 'Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back.' So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, 'Put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him, so he will be struck down and die.'"
Yeah, that's everybody's favorite story. I always, every time I read it, I think, man, aren't these righteous people just so annoying? They won't do what you expect them to do. Yeah, because you're thinking like a rotten sinner.
So David, he's trying to trick Uriah in any way he can, and Uriah resists drinking because he wants to keep a clear mind for battle. He doesn't know what else is afoot. He's just thinking, well, I need to keep a clear mind for battle. I need to, maintain unity with the troops and that I'm fighting with and everything.
Well, a lot like that guy that you were rooming with is like, I have to be in solidarity with my congregation.
Yeah.
Maintain the fast.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's basically exactly what he's thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even after David makes him drunk, right, he still makes good decisions. He's so committed to his purpose there that he doesn't go into his wife. And then so David's plan is foiled, so he has to kill him to get him to keep from, because otherwise Uriah would say, well, I never slept with my wife. How did she get pregnant, And so David has to get rid of him and make it look like maybe he did go into her,
Yeah.
But that doesn't work either, because David's found out by the prophet Nathan. And as a result, the child that's born to David and Bathsheba ends up dying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Well, and there are more consequences than that.
Yeah, sure. And but David does take Bathsheba to be his wife. But it's another intergenerational impact.
Yeah, I mean, presumably,
from sin.
As far as we can tell, he wipes out the generations of Uriah. Doesn't tell us that he has any kids.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like apparently the best guy in all of Jerusalem, and he's like, yeah, it's enough of that.
Yeah, it's a terrible, and that's an intergenerational impact as well. That Uriah doesn't end up having kids through Bathsheba, but David does. But that first child that they had was lost, and again, that's a generational impact of their sin.
Mm-hmm.
So, now moving on, the next one is an interesting story. Is the story of the Rechabites,
is one everybody might not be familiar with.
Yeah. We learn about this one in Jeremiah chapter 35. We're just going to read most of the whole chapter. We're skipping verses 3, 4, and 5. But Caleb, you want to read Jeremiah 35?
Yeah. This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord during the reign of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah. Go to the Rechabite family and invite them to come to one of the side rooms of the house of the Lord and give them wine to drink. But they replied, We do not drink wine, because our forefather Jehonadab, son of Rechab, gave us this command. Neither you nor your descendants must ever drink wine, and you must never build houses, sow seed, or plant vineyards. You must never have any of these things, but must always live in tents. Then you will live a long time in the land where you are nomads. We have obeyed everything our forefather Jehonadab, son of Rechab, commanded us. Neither we, nor our wives, nor our sons and daughters have ever drunk wine or built houses to live in or had vineyards, fields, or crops. We have lived in tents and have fully obeyed everything our forefather Jehonadab commanded us. But when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, invaded this land, we said, Come, we must go to Jerusalem to escape the Babylonian and Aramean armies. So we have remained in Jerusalem. Then the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, saying, This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Go and tell the people of Judah and those living in Jerusalem, Will you not learn a lesson and obey my words, declares the Lord? Jehonadab, son of Rechab, ordered his descendants not to drink wine, and this command has been kept. To this day they do not drink wine, because they obey their forefathers' command. But I have spoken to you again and again, yet you have not obeyed me. Again and again I sent all my servants, the prophets, to you. They said, Each of you must turn from your wicked ways and reform your actions. Do not follow other gods to serve them. Then you will live in the land that I have given you, and your ancestors. But you have not paid attention or listened to me. The descendants of Jehonadab, son of Rechab, have carried out the command their forefather gave them, but these people have not obeyed me. Therefore, this is what the Lord God Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Listen, I am going to bring on Judah and on everyone living in Jerusalem every disaster I pronounce against them. I spoke to them, but they did not listen. I called to them, but they did not answer. Then Jeremiah said to the family of the Rechabites, This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. You have obeyed the command of your forefather Jehonadab and have followed all his instructions and done everything he ordered. Therefore, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Jehonadab, son of Rechab, will never fail to have a descendant to serve me.
So this doesn't really talk about the reason for why they weren't drinking, but it sets up these two different groups of people, one who listens to their forefathers and one that doesn't.
Yeah.
And the one that does listen is the one that doesn't imbibe in any drink. Mm-hmm. And the one that doesn't listen to God and their forefathers is the one that's worshiping idols.
Yeah.
Basically, they're being adulterous in their idolatry. And so this kind of gets back to the whole idea of what's reality and what isn't reality. Reality is that there's a God, and everyone can see that from creation, right? Mm-hmm. As like the book of Romans, among others, say, and the creation story and everything else. But the people of Judah, they aren't honoring God. They aren't listening to God, even though He's their creator. And so it's like they are living this altered reality. Oh no, a stone can be a god. No, it can't. Only if you're drunk.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this. You see the generational effects of that too, right? Because the Rechabites are shown as people who carry the tradition of the previous generation down to the next and pass it on down to the next.
Kind of like we're supposed to practice the Shema.
Yeah, yeah. And so, Jeremiah is saying, well, look, here's a group of people that actually listens to their parents and follows the traditions of God and on down through generation and practices the Shema. So, like, why aren't you guys doing it? So you have no excuse because here's a group that does it. And anyways, the main feature of that group of people is that they don't drink. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a on purpose, really, to say, if you want to think soberly about how you approach life, right, then look at what the sober people do.
Getting back to that theme of sober thinking, we brought that up earlier. Mm-hmm. We'll go into the New Testament and find several commands about remaining sober. Like
Yeah.
1 Peter 1:13, therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming.
Yeah, so this is like the first of three statements Peter makes about sobriety. We're going to read all three of them. But in this case, he's saying, well, you need to stay sober because that way you'll be focused on the hope that you have in Jesus Christ, right? And remain watchful for his return, right? So that's a good reason to stay sober.
Oh, yeah. And like you said, Peter, this is almost kind of a recurring phrase of his.
Yeah.
In 1 Peter 4:7, the end of all things is near. Therefore, be alert and of sober mind so that you may pray.
Yeah, so the end of all things is near. Same thing. Christ is going to return.
When he's
right?
revealed at his coming, yeah.
So be alert and be sober, right? That you can pray and be ready. And then he said, "Oh, go ahead."
Sorry, I was just gonna say he's juxtaposing a prayer life with, being sober gives you the ability to have a prayer life. So he's juxtaposing, not being sober with the ability to pray.
We talked about that in episode 15 about how like all of the things that accompany drunkenness keep you from being able to practice life on the good path, keep you from being able to pray, all the spiritual disciplines. I think we talked about spiritual disciplines versus a life of drunkenness and gluttony. We're like, well, yeah, those things gluttony and drunkenness aren't usually conducive to the spiritual disciplines, right?
Right.
And the practice of them, yeah. Then in 1 Peter 5:8, it says, be alert and of sober mind, for your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So that sounds like a good reason to stay sober.
So you don't get eaten by a lion.
Yeah. So most of us don't live in an environment where we could walk outside and get eaten by a lion like maybe some of the people read that initially would have been. And so that was Peter, right? I don't know if you have anything to add on the Peter part there, but
No.
Okay, so then we move on to Paul, and he had to say something about sobriety and drunkenness in 1 Thessalonians 5:1-11, where he says, now, brothers and sisters, about times and dates, we do not need to write to you, for you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness so that this day should surprise you like a thief. You are all children of the light and children of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness. So then, let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, putting on faith and love as a breastplate, and the hope of salvation as a helmet. For God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us so that, whether we are awake or asleep, we may live together with him. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. So again, Paul is taking the same tack that Peter was, that there's a connection between the end of time, the consummation of time, Christ's return, and remaining sober and vigilant and ready for that time.
That's right. I think of, when people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly. I mean, we just read from Jeremiah. Like that's exactly what was happening in Jeremiah's time. All the people are like, the temple of the Lord and Jerusalem will never be destroyed. And he's saying it's about to be any second now, and then it is.
Peace where there is no peace. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so just like we saw in a lot of these other passages where it was tied to a generational shift, here it's being tied to, the shift in the kingdoms, right? To Christ's kingdom and Christ's coming, reign at the end of time. And so this, how are we going to pass down from this world to the next? How many of us are going to be aware? How many of us are going to be ready, right? And have our minds prepared and be sober-minded and looking for the signs of those times?
Yeah.
Or are we just going to be oblivious and live in an altered reality, where we just say, oh, everything's great, everything's peaceful? But there's great transition coming, right? There's great transition has already come with Christ and his ministry and his sacrifice for us and his resurrection. But there's more change to come too.
I just put something together here. So Paul talks a lot about being asleep or being awake here, right? And so did Gregory in that letter of his that we read.
Mm-hmm.
And remember what he pointed out is that these people, sinful people, sleep when they should be awake, and they wake when they should be asleep.
Yes.
So if you put that in the context of what Paul's talking about,
mm-hmm.
right? That obviously we don't want, like Paul uses sleep a lot as a figure of speech for death. So if we die when we should live and we live when we should die, then we're not going to be in the next life, right?
Right.
We'll
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, and the Matthew 6 passage you read earlier about what the light, the darkness and the light coming through your eyes. I mean, like, these people are awake at night when it's dark, mm-hmm. and they're filling themselves with darkness. And they should be awake during the day so they can fill themselves with light.
Yeah.
And like you said, that's how you prepare yourself for, the future return of Christ. So interesting. So I guess the bottom line is that drunkenness and sobriety are like, juxtaposed against each other here. Mm-hmm. And drunkenness is a big distraction that draws you away from Jesus Christ. And sobriety, clear-mindedness, lets you stay focused on Christ.
Yeah. And what have we said was our kind of the general takeaway from all of the sayings of the wise? It's short-term versus long-term thinking.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're like, life is hard, so I'll just get drunk to forget about it as long as I'm here.
Yeah.
Or if you say, well, I don't want to fall asleep, like the parable of the 10 virgins, right? Half of them are ready.
Yeah.
Half of them fall asleep when the
mm-hmm.
bridegroom comes. I don't want to fall asleep on Christ, so I need to remain sober-minded.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So we have a wise words takeaway, which is clear your mind of anything that distracts you from the reality of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. Because
like coffee, right?
Yeah. Well, now Caleb's gone to meddling. With most of you drink coffee, but he hasn't returned yet for us. So one of the realities that you have to live in right now is that we're still waiting. Mm-hmm. And so, we have a job to do in the meantime as Christ's body on this earth to fulfill his ministry, fulfill his teachings in our lives and in the lives of the people we know to make
and to
Christ
our children,
known.
right? And to our children especially.
And to our children, yeah.
Shema, and we saw all these family problems with drunkenness.
Yeah.
If you meet somebody who is totally opposed to drink, like won't even touch a drop, I mean, I'll give you 10-1 odds that one of their parents was an alcoholic. That's almost the way it goes. If they're like they're vehemently against it, and they're like, "Hey, you shouldn't touch that stuff,"
or
that's basically because their dad, drank all the time.
Or, which is probably the common reason, but the more rare reason is that their family practiced the Shema. And
he's a descendant of Rechab.
Yeah, taught them correctly. So, drunkenness, fogs your mind, fogs your senses, distracts you from reality. And the ultimate reality in this world is Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And so that's why our wise words takeaway was worded that way. So what you want to do in this life is focus on Jesus Christ. And you can't do that if you're focused on other things or things that aren't even real. Mm-hmm. And he's reality. So where do you go to find a group of people that are focused on Jesus Christ, Caleb?
To church.
Yeah, to church. We always try to point you. Find a body of people that are committed to serving Christ, not themselves, and that'll help you focus your mind and your life on Christ as well. So, you have anything left to add?
No.
All right. Well, he's Caleb and I'm Timothy. Thank you for listening to Bible Discussions on Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. Please consider subscribing to our channel to help support our efforts. All scripture quotations, unless otherwise indicated, are taken from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV, copyright by Biblica Inc., used by permission of Zondervan, all rights reserved. This program is copyright 2025 by Timothy Klingerman. God bless all of you.